There are over 4,000 dating advice articles published online every single month. Wait 3 seconds. Text back immediately. Don't double text. Play hard to get. Don't play hard to get. Always split the bill. Never split the bill. Match their energy. Don't match their energy. It's exhausting. And honestly, most of it is noise. It's contradictory, it's confusing, and it's turning something that should feel natural into a strategy game with invisible rules that nobody actually agrees on. And the worst part? The more rules you try to follow, the more anxious you get. You're not connecting with people anymore. You're performing. You're calculating. You're sitting there after a great date thinking, did I text back too fast? Instead of thinking, wow, I really like them. So here's what I want to do today. I want to throw out the rule book. All of it. The dating hacks, the manipulation tactics, the step-by-step formulas for getting someone to like you, and I want to replace it with just 3 rules. 3. That's it, because after looking at decades of relationship psychology and listening to what actual experts who study love for a living have to say, almost everything that actually works in dating comes down to these 3 things. If you get these right, most of the other stuff either falls into place on its own or doesn't matter nearly as much as you think. Let's get into it. Rule number 1. Know what you actually need, not what you think you want. This is where most people mess up before they even go on a first date. They sit down and build this mental checklist. Must be tall, must have a good job, must be funny, must love dogs, must dress well, must have the same taste in music, and on until they've basically designed a fictional character that doesn't exist. And then they wonder why nobody ever measures up. Here's the thing. Having standards is healthy. You should have standards. According to research, people with higher standards tend to end up in relationships where they're treated better. That's a fact. But there's a massive difference between standards and a checklist. Standards are about values. They're about how someone treats you, how they show up, whether they're honest, whether they respect your boundaries. A checklist is about specs. It's like you're shopping for a car instead of connecting with a human being. Relationship researcher Gary Lewandowski put it perfectly. He said you should optimize for comfort instead of confidence, kindness over sparks, and friendship over instant chemistry. In other words, stop looking for someone who makes your heart race and start paying attention to someone who makes you feel safe. Because that racing heartbeat you think is love, half the time it's just anxiety dressed up as attraction. And this ties into something psychologists call the paradox of choice. When you have too many options and too many criteria, you don't make better decisions, you make worse ones, or you make no decision at all. Think about dating apps. You've got thousands of profiles at your fingertips. And what happens? You swipe endlessly, you go on a handful of dates, and nobody feels right, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, what if there's someone better in the next swipe? That's not high standards, that's paralysis. Dr. Helen Fisher, who's a senior research fellow at the Kinsey Institute, actually warns against what she calls binge swiping. She says after meeting 5 to 9 people, you should get off the app and focus on one person, because your brain literally can't evaluate genuine compatibility when it's overloaded with options. You end up judging people on the most superficial criteria just to narrow things down, and then you miss the person who might have been incredible for you because they didn't photograph well or their bio was a little awkward. So rule number 1 isn't about lowering your standards, it's about refocusing them. Instead of asking, does this person check all my boxes, ask yourself, do I feel respected around them? Do I feel heard? Do I feel like I can be myself? Those are the questions that actually predict whether a relationship will last, not whether they're 6'2" or whether they like the same Netflix shows you do. And here's something else that trips people up. Social psychologist Harry Reese at the University of Rochester found that romantic chemistry isn't always instant. He says the feeling that the other person just gets us is really emerging chemistry, and it develops through genuine conversation and mutual understanding over time. So if you don't feel fireworks on the first date, that doesn't mean there's nothing there. It might just mean you need another conversation, another moment of actually seeing each other. Some of the strongest relationships start slow. They build. And the people who dismiss someone after one coffee because they didn't feel the spark are often the same people who keep chasing intensity and wondering why nothing lasts. And there's one more piece to this. You need to understand the difference between your needs and your fantasies. Your needs are non-negotiable. Things like emotional safety, mutual respect, shared core values. Your fantasies are the movie version of love you've been sold since you were a kid, the dramatic confession in the rain. The person who just knows everything you're feeling without you having to say a word. That stuff makes great cinema, but terrible real-life relationships. Because when you're chasing a fantasy, you're not seeing the person in front of you, you're seeing a projection. And projections always disappoint. Rule number 2, show up as yourself, not a performance. This one sounds obvious, but almost nobody does it. Think about the last time you were really into someone. What did you do? You probably overthought every text, You probably agonized over what to wear. You probably rehearsed what you were going to say, and then second-guessed yourself the entire time. And in doing all of that, you showed up as a curated, filtered, carefully managed version of yourself instead of, you. Brene Brown spent 6 years studying human connection, and here's what she found. The people who had the deepest, most meaningful relationships weren't the ones who had it all together. They were the ones who were willing to be vulnerable. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they actually were. And she described vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. That unstable feeling you get when you step out of your comfort zone or do something that forces you to loosen control. Now, in the context of dating, that means something very specific. It means being honest about who you are, even when it's uncomfortable. It means saying, hey, I'm actually kind of nervous right now, instead of pretending you're the most confident person in the room. It means admitting that you don't have everything figured out instead of performing some idealized version of yourself that you think the other person wants to see. And here's the irony. When you stop performing, you actually become more attractive, not less, because authenticity is magnetic. People can feel when someone is being real with them, just like they can feel when someone is putting on an act. And think about it from the other side. When you're on a date with someone who's clearly trying too hard, who's clearly saying what they think you want to hear, what do you feel? You feel disconnected. Something feels off. You might not be able to name it, but your gut knows. And that's because real connection can only happen between real people, not between two performances trying to impress each other. Morgan Anderson, a relationship expert, puts it this way. Become the version of yourself that you would be excited to date. Not the version you think others want, not the version that plays it cool or acts like they don't care. The version that's done the personal work, that's honest about their flaws, and that shows up with genuine energy. That's the person worth dating. That's the person who attracts the right kind of partner. And this connects to something psychologist Terry Orbuch found in her research. She discovered that people who were able to neutralize their emotional attachment to past relationships, people who could honestly say, I don't feel much of anything for my ex, were significantly more prepared for healthy new relationships. Why? Because they weren't dragging old baggage into new connections. They weren't trying to prove something. They weren't performing the role of someone who's over it. They actually were. So, showing up as yourself also means showing up without the weight of your past failures. It means not punishing the new person for what the last person did. It means entering each new connection with a blank slate and the willingness to be seen as you actually are right now. Not the version of you that got hurt. Not the version of you that messed up. The version of you that learned from all of it and is still here, still trying. There's also research from Professor Tara Suwanyata-Kaiporn at Cal State Fullerton on what she calls the 50-50 communication rule. It's simple. On dates, aim for equal talking time, ask genuine questions, then actually listen to the answers. Don't just wait for your turn to speak. People remember how you made them feel far more than any specific thing you said. And when you give someone the space to be heard, you're creating the conditions for real connection, not the surface-level small talk that makes both of you feel like you're running through a script. And one more thing about vulnerability. A lot of people confuse being vulnerable with being weak. They think that if they show their emotions or admit they care, they'll get taken advantage of. But vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. It takes zero bravery to keep everyone at arm's length and pretend nothing affects you. It takes enormous bravery to look someone in the eye and say, I like you, and I'm scared of that. That's strength. And the people who are worthy of your time will recognize it as such. Rule number 3. Watch what they do, not what they say. Words are cheap. Anyone can say the right things. I really like you. You're so important to me. I've never felt this way before. You've heard it all. Maybe you've even said it all. But words without action are just noise. And in the early stages of dating, actions are the only currency that matters. This isn't just common sense. It's backed by some of the most robust relationship research ever conducted. Dr. John Gottman spent over 40 years studying what makes relationships succeed or fail. He brought thousands of couples into his research lab, sometimes called the Love Lab, and observed how they interacted in real time. And one of his most groundbreaking discoveries was the concept of bids for connection. A bid is any attempt one person makes to connect with the other. It can be something small, like saying, hey, look at that sunset, or something big, like, I had a really hard day, and I need to talk about it. What Gottman found is that the way partners respond to these bids is the single biggest predictor of whether a relationship will last. In successful relationships, partners turn toward each other's bids 86% of the time. In relationships that eventually failed, they only turned toward each other 33% of the time. Let that sink in. 86 versus 33. That's not a subtle gap, that's a canyon. And these weren't dramatic moments either. These were everyday interactions. One partner says, hey, I read something interesting today. And the other person either looks up and says, oh yeah, what was it? Or keeps scrolling their phone. That's a bid. And the response to that bid, multiplied across hundreds of small moments, is what builds or destroys a relationship. The difference between relationships that thrive and relationships that crumble isn't about grand romantic gestures or perfect compatibility. It's about whether someone pays attention when you say something, whether they look up from their phone when you point something out, whether they engage when you share something about your day. It's the small stuff, and it starts in dating. So when you're getting to know someone, pay attention to the small stuff. Do they follow through on plans? If they say they'll call you, do they call? If they say they'll be somewhere at 7, are they there at 7? Do they ask about things you've told them before? Or does it feel like every conversation starts from scratch? Do they remember what matters to you? These aren't minor details, they're data points, and they tell you everything about what a relationship with this person would actually look like. Relationship expert Christy Kadarian talks about this as consistent character. She says you need to see someone show up day in, day out, with the same qualities you saw on the first date. Because anyone can be amazing for one evening. That's just a performance. Real character is what someone does when nobody's watching, when they're tired, when it's not convenient, when showing up requires actual effort. And here's where your gut comes in. Licensed relationship therapist Jaime Bronstein says, your intuition is your inner compass, and it will never steer you wrong. So if someone is saying all the right things but something feels off, trust that feeling. If they tell you you're a priority but their actions say otherwise, believe their actions. If they apologize beautifully every time they hurt you but keep doing the same thing, that's not growth, that's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. Now, this rule works both ways. It's not just about evaluating the other person, it's also about holding yourself accountable. Are you showing up in the way you'd want someone to show up for you? Are you following through on what you say? Are you making bids for connection and responding to theirs? Because you can't expect consistency from someone else if you're not offering it yourself. Here's a quick test you can use. Think about the last few dates you went on, or the last person you were interested in. Now, forget what they said and only think about what they did. Did they make time for you, or were you always fitting into their schedule? Did they ask about your life, or just talk about theirs? Did they show curiosity about who you are, or did they just want validation for who they are? When you strip away the words and the charm and the chemistry, what's left? That's your answer. And watch out for the halo effect. That's a psychological phenomenon where one positive trait, usually physical attractiveness, makes you assume everything else about a person is equally positive. They're gorgeous, so they must be kind. They're charming, so they must be honest. They're successful, so they must be emotionally mature. None of that is necessarily true. The halo effect is your brain taking a shortcut, and in dating, shortcuts lead to blind spots. The antidote is simple. Watch what they do, not what they look like while they do it. So let's bring it all together. Rule 1. Know what you actually need. Refocus your standards from a checklist of superficial preferences to what genuinely matters. Emotional safety, respect, shared values, and how someone makes you feel. Let go of the fantasy. Connect with the reality. Rule 2. Show up as yourself. Drop the performance. Be vulnerable. Be honest. Do your own healing work so you can enter new connections without dragging old wounds along. The right person won't be scared off by the real you. They'll be drawn to it. Rule 3. Watch what they do. Words are free. Actions cost time, effort, and energy. Pay attention to consistency. Pay attention to the small bids for connection. Trust your gut when something doesn't add up, and hold yourself to the same standard you're looking for in someone else. That's it. 3 rules. And notice something about all 3 of them. None of them involve strategy. None of them involve manipulation. None of them involve pretending to be someone you're not, or playing some elaborate mind game. They're all about clarity, honesty, and paying attention, which, when you think about it, is probably how human beings connected for thousands of years before someone decided to write a book about the rules of dating. You don't need a 100-point compatibility quiz. You don't need a 30-page dating strategy guide. You don't need to memorize when to text back or how long to wait before saying I like you. If you know what you need, you show up authentically, and you pay attention to what people actually do, you're already ahead of 90% of the dating world. The rest is just noise. So here's my question for you. Which of these 3 rules do you struggle with the most? Is it being clear about what you need? Is it showing up as your real self? Or is it trusting actions over words? Let us know in the comments, because I guarantee you're not the only one. And if this helped you think about dating a little differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, the simplest advice is the most powerful. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.